Welcome to Sips with Scrubs, a nurse podcast where we talk about the good, bad, and ugly of being a nurse. I am your host, Nurse Laney. If you are new, welcome. To people who are returning, welcome back. It's good to see y'all. I'm going to say it in the beginning of the video slash podcast this time. If this is your second or third time returning, I need you to go ahead and subscribe, follow, or whatever all the things are on the appropriate platforms, okay? So today I'm coming to you guys straight off the job. I had some things to get off my chest. But before we get into that, I will be sipping on water throughout today's episode. I did refill my canister downstairs before I got up here. So this one contains 24 fluid ounces, and I drank for sure one full one of these and maybe like a half today. So not a lot of water intake. So I want to drink this and preferably drink the whole thing, before I go to sleep. So like I said, I am fresh off the job. So it is later in the night. I normally do these in the middle of the day. So it is 9:40 p.m. But like I said, I have some things to talk to y'all about. And we will get into that. But I want to first get into today's bad scrub. So today's bad scrub is a 46-year-old Felicia Johnson McGee. She was an employee at the Bristol at Tampa Rehabilitation and Nursing Center. She was arrested on April 20th, 2023 and was charged with second-degree attempted murder, aggravated battery, and discharging a deadly weapon after an altercation with a coworker turned violent. So, yeah, that's kind of crazy. So I'm reading this article as is. So if it's not written well, it ain't me. All right. So according to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, McGee and another employee were engaged in a verbal altercation within the nursing home facility they both worked at. Deputies then say that McGee and the victim left the facility where their argument continued in the parking lot. Eventually, the argument escalated and investigators say McGee pulled out a gun and shot her coworker in the arm. The victim was transported to Tampa General Hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Deputies say that McGee and the victim had worked together at the facility for less than 2 months. And, of course, it was caught on video. It says in the footage, McGee is seen talking to the victim, a male who also worked at the nursing home facility, before pulling out a gun and shooting him. The victim is seen fleeing, and McGee pursues him for a short distance, firing off more shots. Wow. According to a press release, the third individual in the video is reported to be McGee's daughter. What? Why you got your daughter involved, bro? So, of course, the sheriff had a statement to say, and other spokespeople. They said that Felicia McGee was registered as a certified nurse assistant since 2007. And right now, her license is currently active. So, that's interesting. So, I don't know. What y'all beef, not y'all beefing at the job, child. Like, woof. That's crazy, but I've heard of situations like that before. Y'all definitely comment down below if y'all had incidences where coworkers were fighting at y'all job. Because at one of my jobs that I've had before, a coworker, yeah, it was two coworkers, I believe it was. They almost like squabbled for real, and they ended up firing one girl. So it ain't just the patients that's crazy, y'all. So it's hard out here. Y'all let me know if y'all have any stories similar to that one down below in the comment section, because that's crazy. Not you taking me out my character at the workplace. And what you do, go to your car to get the gun, because you shouldn't be having a gun with you at work. Like, firearms aren't allowed in hospitals and stuff like that. So very, very, very interesting. So I wanted to talk with you guys because I mentioned before in previous episodes, A Rock and a Hard Place and All That Glitters Isn't Gold, about like some things I've been going through at my work place and kind of like going in between what I want to do, what I don't want to do, where I want to go from here, sorts of things. I'm still somewhat in that space. I did decide I'm not going to do IMU. I'm going to stick with MedSurg because I do feel as though they're going to take advantage, and if I don't end up liking it, like they'll still probably try to place me in those areas if they're actually really short and not have like the skill set to do it. And like where I'm at in my life, I don't want work to be stressful. I want to like come in, take care of my patients, feel like I've done something for the day, and like go home. Like I'm not trying to like think super hard. I'm not really even trying to be challenged. And I mean, honestly, they need people like me in regular med surge because I don't know what's going on. But I don't know. Stuff be slipping through the cracks. And like, I pay attention, even though I don't be wanting to like work that hard, don't mean I don't work that hard. And like, I be paying attention to stuff essentially and following up on things and like connecting the dots that's not been connected. I don't be knowing what y'all be doing at work or what be going on in y'all work day, but like sometimes I get to different units and I be like, why is this going on with this patient and what's this about and blah blah blah. But it also might help that I provide like a different perspective because I've been in so many different areas. So that is a possibility as well. So I don't know. I feel like, I catch a lot of things and I kind of help expedite things along, especially like with discharging people and getting other people onto the floor and get them situated and stuff like that. I feel like some nurses drag their feet in that department. So, thus said, I'm not going to do IMU. Like, I'm good on it. Now, as in all that glitters isn't gold, I did talk about in my scrub section about this situation I encountered. I'm not going to recap the whole thing. So if you guys did not listen or watch that video, definitely go back. And if you want to, just skip to the scrub and sip so you can have some context of what I'm about to talk about. But at this particular facility, I've like been doing float pool for a year now. But when I was like initially doing it, I really was going like all over the place. So I do have three facilities that I rotate between. And then, of course, like on either facility, I could go to any of the med surg units. So initially, I will say that I was going to medical center. I don't go there anymore because it was too wide of a range of places I could get floated to. Like, I've actually worked in the psych unit, and that's like, very specialized. Everything is very specialized in the medical center. So I've worked the psych unit there. I've worked like rehab. I've worked neurosurgery. It's like really like detailed, and I didn't really like that. I also didn't like that I didn't know where I was going until literally when I'm walking into the hospital, I have to go to the office, look at the paper, and see where I'm assigned to. Whereas with the community hospitals, they give my assignment beforehand, and I know what unit I'm going to. And most of the time, like they don't float me from where I'm already assigned to. So you know, I like that. Like, I'm not trying to guess where I'm going. I don't want, like I said, I'm not trying to be stressed, right? I like this. I'm at the point in my nursing career where I'm like, I'm really just trying to do my job and go home. Like, my personal life is like my main gig right now. Like, work is not like important to me aside from paying the bills and me just doing a good job while I'm there and me enjoying what I do while I'm there. Like, aside from that, like, I'm not trying to be challenged or anything like that. So I dropped medical center for my facility and I obtained a new one. So this facility that I'm at currently, for some reason this year, I've been kind of doing like local contracts. If you guys know what that term refers to, it's kind of like, you know, I kind of say like local traveling. Like it's my facilities, but I'm there for like a month or so, something like that. Whereas before, I would like really be like rotating. Like one day I'm at this hospital, the next day I'm at this hospital, and it'll all be in the same week. I could go to like all three of my facilities. It was like that. Now lately, I've been like set in one spot. Like in January, I was at one hospital. February and March, I was in April, kind of low key. I was at one hospital, and now, well, okay, end of April. in beginning of May, June. I've been at this facility. So it's like, okay, I've not been at this facility like consistently like that. I've been like going for like a day and then like or 2 days out the week and then I won't go back for like a couple of weeks and things like that. So I guess because I'm going there more frequently, I'm noticing more things. But today I had 4 patients, which is good. Y'all know we go up to 5 at my place. We don't do 6 because we don't do those things. But you know, like they try to do 4, right? And we're like perfectly staffed. But today they gave me a patient who had a rapid response, like at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning or something of the sort, and it wasn't all sorted out yet. And I just don't understand like people's rationale with like assigning patients to float pool nurses. I'm like, why would you give unstable patients to nurses that you're unfamiliar with? Like, I don't understand the logic behind that. And it's kind of like I'm in a similar boat with travel nurses, and I know sometimes like travel nurses will get the harder assignments, and I feel like that in the beginning too, because I was like, y'all getting paid so much money, y'all should take more difficult patients. But at the same time, it wasn't like we were giving them something that's crazy. It's like assignments that we've done before, and it wasn't anything that wasn't safe. Like, definitely not. It was more so like rotator patients we would give them, and then we wouldn't keep giving it to them every time they were there like that. Like, it was like, you know, like more so to alleviate the staff, and that was about it. Now, for us and for what I've been seeing, it seemed like we've been getting the short end of the stick. And I'm about to tell my manager, but I'm trying to peep game a little bit longer and see what they do. And I'm going to like document like my steps following that in order to convey to her, like, this is my experience, this is what I did, and blah, blah, blah. Because I really don't want to be emailing her or texting her all day about stuff like this. But I was like, I don't think that's appropriate to give to a float pool nurse. Like, why? But then it's kind of hard to determine because it's like, I don't know the other people on the unit. I don't know what their patient load is like. So maybe their assignment is more difficult than mine. Maybe they have more patients than me. Or maybe I have more experience than them. Like, I'm not able to judge that because I'm not in a role to do so. So I take it. It really wasn't that big of a deal. The patient like was a new onset AFib patient and they converted to with AFib RVR. So that was what the problem was. They were talking about, oh, we called the doctor, well, they called a rapid, and the doctor said they were going to start a drip and transfer them to ICU possibly. But none of that had been initiated. So I'm like, are we transferring the patient to ICU or not? Like, are we doing the drip or not? Like, what are we doing exactly? And she's like, oh, I don't know. She only gave 5 milligrams metoprolol IV. Heart rates like it was higher when I wasn't there, like 150s to 170s or some crap. And that's all they had given at the point of when I was there, like during shift change, and it was like 140s heart rate type thing. So it's just kind of like, okay, it's a patient sinus tech or the AFib still? Did they convert back? Like, why didn't we give more medications? And she didn't have a reason. Now, the only thing I will say about this situation is that the charge nurse actually was helpful and was following up on things, like without me having to ask her to do so. So she was like talking to telemetry and then getting orders from the cardiologist and things like that. But I'm just like, why would you even give me this patient? Like, I don't understand. But I ended up giving the patient like 15 milligrams of cardizem IV push, and then she converted back to normal sinus rhythm. And like the heart rate was like sustained sinus tachy in the like 100s to 110s. So I was just like, okay, like, you know, y'all know I have IMU experience, so that's the type of patients we would have. So I'm just kind of like, okay, but I mean, like, I'm not IMU and these patients aren't being properly monitored. So like, why are we just keeping these people on the floor and they're not exactly stable? And then why are y'all giving them to me? So there's that. And then I like with my assignments today, I ended up discharging like 3 out of the 4 of my patients. And I'm just like, do y'all look at the assignment and see who's anticipated to discharge? because when I went into rounds, y'all sure knew like who was supposed to go home today and who wasn't. So I'm just not understanding. Why are you giving me a whole patient assignment that's going to discharge? And of course, the patient who didn't discharge was the one who, was the AFib RVR that night. So discharged all my people. Luckily, there was a discharge nurse. I only actually did one discharge myself, and it's not really hard for me to do discharges, to be honest. But it's more so the principle of the matter. Like, this is the reason why we have resources, is to alleviate. You know what I'm saying? And then now they have like this app they use to do admissions, so that's cool. And that ended up working out in my favor because I knew I was going to get a whole bunch of admissions, and you don't care about trying to not give them back to back to me, because if everybody else still has all their patients and I'm the only one discharging, the patients have to go somewhere. But luckily, like, they have that resource, and I was able to like set the patients up with the iPad and let the tele nurse do the admission, so that worked out that way. But I didn't even know that that was like a thing, and I'm pretty positive they didn't take that into consideration, like, oh, she could just do this or whatever. So, my next problem with this day was that I had a patient that was assigned to me coming from ER, and I was looking through their stuff, and their blood pressure was in the 180s when I first looked, and it was trending up. Hydralazine was given at 9:30, and it was like 1 o'clock, and blood pressure was still like in the 180s and climbing. And then they didn't validate all the vitals, but of course I could still see it. So I'm seeing that this patient low key is like 190s, 200s, but they're only validating the 180 ones. And then I'm just kind of like, what? So I told the charge nurse, like, hey, like, I'm not going to accept this patient if they try to give me a report. I'm going to refuse them. And then she was kind of like, well, we don't really refuse patients. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, y'all don't have floor standards? Like, I was like, everywhere else I go, especially like in this hospital system, on the units, like the blood pressure has to be stable and be below 180 in order to accept the patient to the unit. And she was like, yeah, no, like we don't really have that here. Like one time I asked the manager, and she said that sometimes people blood pressure sustains in the 200s, and that's their baseline. And I was like, and you think that's safe to accept on a med surg unit? Like, and no interventions like were taken. Like, even if interventions were taken and it's not going down, okay, then maybe this patient needs a drip and they need to go to ICU. Like, why would I take that patient? So it just didn't make sense to me, but I was just giving her a heads up in case like I got pushback that that's what I was going to do. Now, luckily it never came to that because they didn't like give me a report for like hours. And then when the secretary like messaged them and it was like, hey, like, what's the ET on this patient? They said they were trying to get the blood pressure down. But I thought that was odd too, because I'm like, how are you trying to get the blood pressure down if you're not administering any medication? Like, what'd you do? Like, you just waiting on it to like magically go down? Like, what's up? So then, like, they putting meds in, but it's like almost 2 o'clock at this point, like, that they putting the meds in for. And I'm just like, girl, so y'all really just watch this patient blood pressure be high for this many hours and not address it? That's insane to me. And then the patient ended up going to endo because she was going to get an EGD and colonoscopy performed. But before that, they had ended up being able to stabilize the pressure. But I was just like, how doesn't this unit have like parameters and y'all just accept whatever ER sends y'all? Or like, how does that work? That's kind of crazy to me. Um, Now this is what the charge nurse tells me. I don't know. Like, I didn't ask anybody else. I did ask like one of the other nurses, like, hey, like, y'all be taking patients like this? And she was like, kind of like depends on who's charging. Cause if there was this other charge nurse there, then she would have told them they need to address it before sending them up. And I was just like, I shouldn't even have to be thinking about this. Like, when you tell bed board what room is available and they got a patient on the board, you should be looking at the patient to see if they're safe to come and are appropriate to come to our unit. I shouldn't have to do that as the staff nurse unless it's like something like I'm really digging into like the chart and I find something that's not right. You should be looking at the vitals, the results, like quick glances to make sure this patient is appropriate for the unit. Because my thing was, I think I've mentioned this to y'all already. What if we would have accepted that patient and then we were like, oh, okay, let's get a PRN order. Okay, first of all, who knows how long that would have taken to get. Okay, we get the PRN order, we administer it, it's not going down. Then what? We keep trying stuff, it's not working. Then what? What we gonna do? Call a rapid, and then what's gonna happen after that? They're gonna go to ICU because this facility don't have IMU. So all of that could have been avoided if they would have stayed in the ER, addressed it when they were supposed to, because you shouldn't be sending unstable patients, and then they would have had an appropriate level of care. Because if the blood pressure is not responding to medication, then they might need to be on a drip. So I'm like, why are we like wasting time and resources moving people to here and then to here if that happens? And I've actually had that happen at that facility before, like last year sometime. I can't remember the point. I think it had something to do, and I think the patient wasn't even on telly yet. And when I put them on telly, I found out they were like in AFib, RVR, or some crap like that. And I'm like, you know damn well downstairs, like they already knew that that patient like had something going on, and they tried to medicate him real quick and then send him up fast, like I feel like to get rid of him. So I'm just kind of like, I don't really like that. I don't really like how I feel like y'all playing with people's life and license. So I'm kind of considering like trying to see if I'm going to change facilities, but I'm like, that facility is already far from me anyway, like driving. So I'm kind of like, what's the incentive of me going there if it's that and this going on? Like, the only reason why I would stay is because I don't know how the other hospital is that's closer to me. But I'm like, hey, man, like, shoot, I think that's like half the drive, low key, if I go ahead and go over there. So I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I think I'm going to finish out this month and see how it is. And then I'm going to talk to my manager and be like, hey, I'm interested in switching facilities. Is there any availabilities at this location or whatever? And then going from there or trying to find somewhere else. Cause I'm just like, I don't like that. Like, I really don't. And like I said, I already drive far, like almost an hour to get to that facility. So it's really not worth that. And then today on the way to work, I felt like I was about to risk my life because it was raining hard. And y'all know, as nurses, we got to go to work, rain, sleet, hell or snow. And I was like, I can't see. Like, I'm driving and I can't see where I'm going. That was scary. But I mean, I got to work thankfully okay. Literally, I was telling Jesus, like, thank you, Jesus. Please, Jesus, help. Like, I was scared. I ain't gonna lie, for real. And I haven't talked about this on the podcast before, but I've gotten into a car accident on my way to work one time on that highway, the same highway that I have to use to go to this facility. So I be like kind of paranoid still because I feel like I like low key like little PTSD, like, you know, like this is where I got hit at before. I didn't get hit, but my tire blew out. But this is where this happened at, you know, and that's scary. Like, you could really lose your life out here. I'm not playing around like that. So I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm risking it every time I drive all the way out there because it's so far. Oh my God, I drive almost an hour there and an hour back. That's a lot. So I'm really considering, you know, unless it redeems itself, but I don't see it doing that. I don't know. Like, I think I'm gonna finish out like the set time they had me there, but like just to see if it's like, am I just getting unlucky at this point? Or I'm, you know, if it's like consistent, then I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, dip. Which I wouldn't be mad at, like I said, because I'll be closer to my house. So that's kind of where I'm at now. So I did figure out the IMU thing, but now I'm like, now I'm thinking about switching facilities. So I talked to Kelsey on the way home because I was like, boy, like, am I bugging or I just need a second opinion? And we both agreed, like, we wouldn't give a float pool nurse like hard assignments or anything because it's like, I don't know you and I don't know what you're capable of. It's not even like they're asking me like, oh, hey, are you familiar with this type of patient? Have you seen this before? They just give you stuff. And I'm like, why is it always up to us to advocate like safe assignments? You know what I mean? So I don't really like that. So I think I'm going to do one conversation card and then we're going to get out of here. And by the way, I still walked and closed my rings before I got on here to start talking to you guys. So shout out to me. So this card says, "Do you have any mentors?" I don't. So let's skip. Well, okay, I will say this though. I don't know how to define a mentor. So this might not apply, but it's in the same vein. I don't have a lot of people to go to in float pool because like we're few and far between and we're like everywhere. But recently it's been a lot of us at this facility that I've been currently working at. So those nurses I mentioned, I think on the last episode about how one stepped in for me and all this other stuff, like they're black and older than me. So and they've been a nurse longer than me. So they kind of low key be looking out or like always listening to what I'm saying. And one of them I used to work with back in my first facility. I think she was doing agency at the time, but she was at my hospital a lot. So she was there today. So I asked her like her opinion on the whole thing and stuff like that. And she's kind of at the point where she's just like, she gets the job done and she like goes on about her day. But I'm like, I don't mind working hard if it's something worth working hard for. Like the stuff that I be stressed about at work has nothing to do with me. Like I'm just like I'm not supposed to be worried about this. Like I'm not supposed to have to think about this. Like I should just be focused on my patients and that's it. I should not be concerned for patient safety on like not my end or the patient end, but like administration management type stuff, whatever. So I do talk to her now that I know she's there like a lot. Like we both got assigned to stay there for like until I think June. So I did talk to her today. She was on a different unit and I went and found her because I saw that she was scheduled to work. And I was like, hey, can I run something by you real quick? So I will say that I go to her for advice. I don't know if you would call that a mentor or what, but our relationship began because just, you know, having commonalities, both being black and like we already had worked together before somewhere else. And then like now we're doing the same thing again. Because even before she was talking to me about like how we make almost as much as nurse practitioners and it's kind of like not worth like going back to school and acquiring loans and such to be making almost about the same as we do now, and then we'll have more responsibilities. So we kind of run different things by each other in that aspect. So yeah, I that's who I would think of at this moment because I sure did seek her out. I don't have her number or nothing, but I was like, I know she don't work a lot, but she worked enough that I knew she would probably be there. And one of the other girls, she works like dang near every day, I ain't gonna lie. But because of that, they keep them like at this facility for the 3 shifts a week and anything extra that they pick up, they float to somewhere like a different hospital or whatever, as long as they fulfill this like contract type thing. So that's who I would say. Shout out to her. I'm grateful. It's nice to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, especially someone that's like in your shoes. Because even though I still talk to the girls and we can relate on regular patient stuff or you know hassles and family stuff, like no, they're not gonna fully understand what I'm going through because my position is like very unique and I go to like a lot of different units, so it kind of changes some aspects, like stuff that we have at certain hospitals they don't have over there and stuff like that, even though it's the same like network. So I'm really appreciative of her. And then I have this other nurse. I wouldn't call her a mentor really, but she normally comes to me for advice. I think we've been nurses around the same amount of time, but she worked like in long-term facilities more than when she's a nurse, more than acute care. She's a good nurse though, but we're also in the same type of position. So I asked her to, I was really just trying to figure out how this other hospital is before I like say I want to go over there. So Kelsey said she talked to some nurses from that facility that I was looking into before, and they said that it was like okay. So I was like, all right, like we'll see how this goes, and if it doesn't go well, because it's still like a lot, it's gonna be a new stress just learning a new place and all of that. Like now I know all of my places and I've been to all of the units, So I'm like familiar. So I'm like, do I really want to take the risk of taking them off my list and having to learn something new? Or do I want to deal with what I already know and just advocate for myself if I feel uncomfortable or if I feel like something's unsafe? Because I'm not going to be able to change policy there. All I could do is like look out for me and be like, I'm not willing to take that patient because of this, this, and this. If you want to give me another one, that's fine. Or you want to give them to somebody else and they're willing to do it, that's fine. But I'm not going to take them. So I don't know, guys. As like I said last time, I'm going to keep y'all updated. Right now, I'm kind of leaning towards the latter. Like, I got to be in the mood to learn something like new. And like I said, I ain't really trying to do all that. I just want y'all to do right. Lord. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's chit chat ramble. All of the things, y'all definitely comment down below and let me know what y'all think about what I'm going through. Have you been through something similar? Are you going through that now? Have you been through it? Like, what advice do y'all have to give me? What would you do if you were in my shoes? And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.